how much crit rate and crit damage should characters have, perhaps what ratio as well to optimize our damage for our overall account. Now I know some of us are already thinking, but some characters are unique, they might have certain special requirements. We will talk about exceptions towards the end of the video, but for by and large we're going to talk about the general character first. And the first thing that I want to know and want to test out is, what is actually the relationship between a crit and a non-crit, because that's going to affect our calculations as well. Is it when we crit, we do 1000 damage, and if our crit damage here is at 100%, does it mean when we crit, we then do double that, 2000 damage? Let's find out. And our test subject today, I'll just be smacking this and I hope that one crits and one doesn't crit as well. So let's take a look at the first one. So that very simple test actually told us a very key piece of information. And for those of you who play Genshin Impact, the crit rate, crit damage formula works exactly the same. And for those of us who don't, basically if you don't crit and you do 1 damage, and when you crit, the formula works as follows on screen. You take that 1 damage that you have, multiply it by 100% plus the crit damage that you have over here. So in this case, I have 112.1%, which means that this will be my end of my day, my amount of damage if I crit, assuming that I only do 1 damage if I don't crit. Of course, you can go the ratio as well. If you have 1000, this number will also be multiplied by the equal amount. And this concept is going to be very important because that's where we're going to come to our next set, which is a very interesting graphic that I want to share with you guys. But first, we must understand how it's derived. So for those of you who are uninterested in the derivation of how I'm calculating it, you can just skip to the part of the chart. You can find it in timestamps below as well, where I talk about the chart itself. But how I'm going to actually derive it, I'm going to talk about something called average damage. How average damage is calculated, basically I take the sum of the damage when I crit versus the damage where I don't crit. But it's not so simple where I just take that 2.1 something plus 1 and straight up, bam, together you get 3. That's going to actually favor too much crit damage. What I actually need to do is weight these two amount of damage when I crit and the amount of damage when I don't crit based on the probability of them occurring. The probability of me having a crit will of course, based on the example I have here, is 45.5%, which means I adjust the formula as you see on screen. And when I don't crit, for example, the chance of me not critting is, in this case, 100% minus whatever I have here, so which is 54.5%. So that's the probability of a non-crit. When I take those two probabilities and I multiply them by the average damage and plus them together, I get the average damage that is expected for this ratio of crit rate to crit damage, assuming of course that my damage on a non-crit is 1. Taking these assumptions, of course it ignores a lot of other things, like there are so many permutations and combinations available, but we are just for this video assuming that crit rate and crit damage are the only thing that matter. We don't care about attack, we don't care about damage bonuses, elemental bonuses, speed and all that, which do matter, but just for the sake of this video, we just want the mathematical ratios, right? So then what that means is we're going to come to this very interesting chart right here. And for those of you who maybe just skip to this point, basically the numbers that you see on screen on every single mini box that's over there in these colored spaces as well, these are the average damage numbers. The higher the number, the better. The lower the number means the less useful that ratio is, means it's like a weaker ratio compared to something else. So how do you read this chart? Basically, you see those darkened boxes that you see like are slightly boxed up. Those are the 1:2 ratios. A lot of people are going to be talking about this quote-unquote 1:2 ratio. What that means is, well, for every 1 crit rate you have 2 crit damage. So for example, those boxed up ones, you will see like 30 to 60%, 40% crit rate to 80% crit damage, 50% crit rate to 100% crit damage, and stuff like that. The numbers inside of them show you that the average damage that you do on every single instance. So to beat a 50 or 1:2 ratio, you want to have a higher number than whatever you are seeing on the shaded section. So you can just either go on to the next color. For example, let's say we are looking at this gray 1.5 right here. If you enter any of like the green portions, like for example, we go to maybe a 60:90 ratio. For that's higher already than a 50:100 ratio. So 60:90 beats a 50:100 ratio based on the formula of average damage as well. Just purely mathematical as well. So that's how you kind of read this chart. If you are a higher number, means that ratio is better. You can tweak your ratios accordingly as well, however you want. This chart basically I color coded it such that you can easily know if you are in a different color, means you automatically know that you're higher than if you were, let's say, now you're in a blue tier, but maybe your previous crit ratio was like a green tier, and where you want to work towards. Where is the optimal ratio in terms of where you want to be is very subjective depending on the character as well, because not every character wants to have like 5,000 crit damage and stuff like that. Some characters, maybe like supports, don't really care too much for crit damage, and this is where I want to talk a bit about the exceptions as well. For those of you who like the chart, I'll leave it on hsrguide.com, or you can check out this video as and when you want. It's always going to be here for you guys too. And if you're finding value in this video so far, it took me a really long time to do all these calculations, so give me a like, subscribe, and a nice comment too if you find it helpful so far and you want to see more of such content. But anyway, so back to the video right now, and this is where I want to talk about like the exceptions to this rule. Not everyone cares too much about crit rate and crit damage. For some of you who know, supports don't really care about it. For example, if you're running like Natasha or other Bronya, for example, characters that generally don't even care too much about damage, this chart is not going to be as relevant to them. And of course, the second part is characters that already have crit multipliers within them. For example, Bronya herself, when she basic attacks, she has 100% crit rate. So this chart totally doesn't apply at all. You generally want to go as much crit damage if you just want to maximize damage. Other characters that are interesting to consider will be characters like Yanqing, because Yanqing has a lot of crit rate coming from his skills on his own already, giving him I think over 80% on its own. For those of you who are wondering, minor traces are totally factored in this chart as well, because it's the final multiplier that you see that this chart is calculating. So this, like for example, you see this minor trace here, this crit damage one, it all factors in, so don't worry about that, it's all included. What is not included, I think, are maybe a few things I will just tell you real quick that limit this effectiveness of this chart in totality. One is, of course, as a lot of you know, damage is not linear. It doesn't only rely on crit rate, crit damage. There are many functions. Enemies defense, so defense shredding, attack bonuses, you have for example team buffers, damage bonuses, elemental damage bonuses. All these things have to be considered when you are thinking of the best builds as well. We do a lot of best build guides on the channel, you can check it out if you're interested already, but for this video, this will teach you and get you started on the optimal crit ratios your characters should have. And if you found this video helpful as well, do give it a like and subscribe. And one last thing before I head off, I think the one thing that these charts and a lot of damage formulas don't calculate in Honkai Star Rail is that it doesn't factor in speed as well as energy restoration, which are also very other important things which contribute to the overall damage of the team. And if you like such videos, you might find these two other videos on the channel pretty interesting as well. Thank you so much for watching, and see you in the next video.
Yeah, I'll be honest, I've been waiting for you to be the one that starts saying the truth. Cause we play these games like nothing's changed, but we're not the same.